Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Nesbit Speckeldorf. Oh, jeez.
Oh my god. You know, you said Nesbit, and all I could think of was Toy Story.
Oh, interesting. This is not a joke. Haley, my wife, one of her favorite movies of all time is Norbit. It's not a joke. And Rasputia, when they're she goes, "You got a girlfriend, Nesbit?" And so that's where she gets the Nesbit from. Anyway.
Nesbit.
Yep.
Oh my god. So, Jeremy, we have two very special guests with us today.
We do. Tell them.
Oh, I have to tell them. Oh, okay. If you guys remember, we've had these guys on the show before. We have our good buddies Zack and Alex with us today.
What's up?
Glad to be here.
Nail it.
I am a professional.
We all are.
It's like introducing your girlfriend to your parents for the first time, because it's really early in the relationship, so you're like, this is my girlfriend. Say hi.
Hi, Mr. Wayland.
Oh man, we're meeting Mr. Whalen first. All right.
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, that's good. And then he has to be like, no, Mr. Whalen was my father.
Oh Jesus.
Oh, that was good. Well, welcome back, boys. Today is, I feel like, going to be a really exciting episode. Would y'all agree?
Yeah.
Now,
Because you finally have two good podcast hosts.
that's right.
A good point,
Thank
Alex.
Thank God. I know we have professionals.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. Well, Zack and I are very busy, but we're happy to grace you.
Yes.
That's right.
Our studios, yeah.
Completely agree.
But wait, if you guys are on, who's listening to the podcast?
Oh my God, that's a really good point. We're gonna have a drop in listenership.
I'm gonna listen to it more now because I'm on it. So
good.
You're welcome.
That's a good point. You know what was cool about this is that both of you independently, sorry, my wife is yelling at the cat. Both of you independently asked to be on this episode specifically about this movie. I don't remember who said it first, but I was like, all right, cool, yeah, we'll have the guest on. And then the other one,
think it was.
Go ahead.
Well, I think it was Zack first, because I think you told him after we did the whale last season that we were going to do Locke this season, and he wanted to be on it,
of course.
And then Alex asked us, he wanted to be on this season, and so we sent him our list, and then Alex said, "Yeah, I want to do Locke."
I was like,
and,
okay.
Yeah, and we're not going to tell him no.
No, of course not. He's too busy. we can get him. We can get him when we can. All right.
Yeah.
I'm your white whale, Moby Dick.
Wow, a lot of callbacks to Frasier today.
Oh. Well, Jeremy, since I introduced the boys, and I've already said the movie, but what are we talking about today?
Today, we're discussing the 2013 Stephen Knight film Locke, starring Tom Hardy and some voices. Some might surprise you if you didn't look it up already. So, it's exciting stuff. And what's really interesting is that just a little fun fact, just between us, is that when I met Zack for the first time, I don't remember where we were, but it was when I was living in Lubbock. I had met Zack, and somehow we got into the discussion of movies again. I don't really know anyone there. I think it was for Keegan's, like it was some sort of party with Keegan. We were outside. We were like at a place at a restaurant or something, and I started talking to Zack, and Locke was brought up like almost immediately. Like, have you seen this movie Locke? And we were both like, "Oh my god, Locke is so good!" And we were just talking about that for about 15 minutes. And that was when I met Zack for the first time. So, fun fact.
Well, and another good fun fact, as we just learned, I'm the only one who hadn't seen this movie prior.
Gives you a really cool perspective. So, don't sell it short.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, since this is your pick, you get to do the synopsis, because doing the Dark Knight synopsis last week was that was not fun.
No?
No.
So the movie takes place primarily, or almost entirely, in I think it's a BMW X something. It's a SUV. Anyway, Ivan Locke is driving to a hospital to see a woman deliver their baby. All right, this woman is not his wife, as we will find out through a series of phone calls. Not only is he struggling with having to basically tear his family apart while he's driving to see his newborn illegitimate child, but he's also having to deal with fixing and sort of facilitating the job that he is still technically in charge of, which is a massive concrete pour for this building that they are building, and that he is in charge of. And so this film is just a series of phone calls as he's trying to facilitate all of his responsibilities and try to juggle them all at the same time, also while trying to maintain a sense of self-ownership and responsibility, and trying to come to terms with doing the right thing, even if it's going to tear his life apart. And that's Locke. So, succinct. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, as we're kind of talking about off mic, and as I just mentioned, I'm the only one here who hadn't seen this prior. And like I mentioned to you off mic, this was not what I was expecting. Like, I knew it had Tom Hardy in it, and that's all I knew. You know, I'd seen the poster for it, and like Zack asked me off mic, I hadn't seen the trailer. I went in completely blind, and honestly, I'm glad I went in completely blind, because again, this was not what I was expecting, and it did not disappoint at all.
So which part were you not expecting? Was it the just one person in a car? Was that what you weren't expecting?
Yes. I didn't look up any of the cast. I apologize if everyone can hear that. I don't know why. It's Otis. I can tell it's Otis. He's freaking out. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be one person in a car. I figured out 3 of the voices without looking them up, which we'll get to.
Brag.
Well, mainly because we'll get to it anyway. Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting it just to be Tom in a car, driving. I was not expecting that at all. I knew a car, this is going to sound really dumb, but I knew a car played some sort of role, considering the poster has him in a car. So I was like, okay, something to do with a car or driving or something. But that's all I knew. And honestly, that was really cool that it's just him in a car.
Yeah, I was the exact same. I remember I was probably like 20, 25 minutes in, and I'm like, it just clicked for me. I was like, okay, this is probably going to mostly take place like this. And I remember just being like super interested in that idea, like that experiment or whatever, to decide to do it that way. But it definitely took me probably like 20 minutes, and I was like, okay, well, we're still in the car, and just get ready to just kind of be here like a passenger. So I was the same, Rain.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I wanted to be on this episode, was because it's such a weird approach to a movie. It's like a one-man play almost.
Mhm.
And, it hasn't really been done very often. Like, really the only one I can think of is Buried with Ryan Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have seen that one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That one is pretty claustrophobic and intense. And this one, he's only in a car, but, you at least get shots, outside of the car.
Sure.
Yeah. And it. Yeah. So kind of the same, to bounce off of you, Zach, is I was like, okay, like he's driving, but I'm sure here in a second we'll cut to wherever he's driving to. And then when it clicked for me, I was like, okay, I actually don't want to see where he's going now. I just want this to keep going. Like I really like, I love that the movie is really not short necessarily, but it is only an hour and 20 minutes. It's like, I want another 40 minutes of him just driving and talking on the phone.
Yeah, I think for me, I must have known. I don't really remember. I must have known this is what this was going into it already. I probably saw it on some list somewhere of like minimal production films. I think at this time I had already seen Buried for sure, and I may have already seen All Is Lost. And so which is an awesome Robert Redford film if you guys haven't seen it. It's just him on a boat, and it's awesome. And so I was probably looking for something similar to that, and blown away, right? Obviously, I'm sure like all of us, about just how Stephen Knight was able to keep us entertained in a way, or at least not be so static, like in the car, right? I mean, we're moving in the car, moving out of the car, we're getting wide shots, we're getting close-ups. It's a really dynamic shoot for sure.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and I did a little reading, and because I was curious, I was like, I wonder if he was like actually talking to the other actors on the other end, and I read that he actually was. So like the conversations we were essentially hearing, I mean, yes, it was scripted, but we were hearing them in real time and them playing off of one another, and I feel like that just adds so much. And I think that's, again, Jeremy, kind of what you're saying. I think that's why it works so well, and why we're not bored with just being in a car.
Right. Yeah. And also, I mean, just the way they shot it is sort of unconventional, which is doing it in one take twice a night. I didn't see for how long, but and it would just run through. How many times?
16. I think they did it in like 2 weeks. I think they only had like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I mean, yeah, and I'm sure he got over that cold eventually, because they wrote it into the script that he had a cold, because Tom Hardy really had a cold, and I'm sure he had to pretend to have a cold at some of those times, just for continuity's sake.
Right.
But I mean, Tom Hardy gets most of the praise here, but I think also the voice casting from everybody else. I think especially for Olivia Colman, Andrew Scott specifically, I think Andrew Scott's a little bit more, I think, in the consciousness right now as we're recording this for his new movie that's getting a whole bunch of buzz right now. But his voice was undeniable. I was such a huge fan of Sherlock when I saw this, that immediately I was like, that's Moriarty right there. What are we doing?
Yeah. I was just about to say, I was like, man, people are gonna like Andrew Scott's so hot right now.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, so I figured him out pretty quickly because yeah, just like yourself, I'm a big fan of Sherlock, and his Scottish draw is very unique, and I was like, that's Andrew Scott. And then I figured out Olivia Colman, and you know the third one I figured out, I'm sure you can guess.
Go ahead.
Tom Holland.
There's no way. That's fine.
No, I did.
I don't believe you.
No, I 100% knew that was Tom Holland before I even looked up who else was on the other end of his phone calls.
Huh.
Congrats.
Congrats.
So we got Tom Holland and Tom Hardy. So this is like a Spider-Man multiverse.
That's right.
Yeah,
You know, it's in there somewhere.
like in the
Or
intro.
Venom is Spider-Man's dad.
Exactly. There's
Venom
not
cheats on
news. Yeah, Venom cheated on Spider-Man's mom, or Aunt May.
And this one
Jesus.
just happened to be in the UK.
That's right.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about the shoot. I think we need to talk about, because it's front and center, but I think we need to talk about the character of Ivan Locke and this very interesting character, because the whole time I was watching it, kind of like what you were saying, Jeremy, in the synopsis, is he wants to do the right thing and he wants to be responsible while juggling all these other things. And it was hard, maybe, and again, that's the benefit of doing the show, is maybe we can figure out in a safe space if he's a good person or not. Because to be honest, I'm leaning more towards he's not.
I think 100% he's a good person. I don't think that's up for debate. I think that when he says that this was a mistake and he acted so outside of himself and so out of character for himself, he's being completely genuine. He's a man of very strict principles. He's a man who takes ownership of things that he is responsible for. And he obviously has childhood trauma with his father, right? And so this being hitting so close to home for him, having even the opportunity to just wash his hands of the situation and, leave Bethan alone with this child is just unacceptable, because he knows what it meant for him not to have a consistent father figure, right? And that's when we get these sort of Shakespearean monologues in the car. Him talking to his dad in the back seat. Of course, he's a good person. I think that this is completely genuine, and he is trying to right a wrong. And again, with his principles and with his ownership of responsibility, he'll do anything for this honesty, right? He'll do anything to maintain his principles are secure and intact.
Okay. Trying to figure out. Here's someone else go. I'm still trying to ruminate with that real quick.
So I think Ivan definitely has a lot of integrity. He he's taking responsibility for what he's done, right? He talks to Gareth, and he's vulnerable with him about what's going on. Obviously, he tells Katrina on a phone call with her. It is, time has gone by, though. So there's been months that have gone by. But the baby's born prematurely, and so that kind of maybe delays his plan of however he had planned on doing it. So like he tells her now he's having to do it. And the baby's coming tonight, so I've got to be there. I think there's and then just throughout all the other interactions, or phone calls, you just get to see that Ivan is a man that has integrity. But I think something that kind of maybe echoes like really Ivan is when he's explaining to Donald about the difference, how important it is to get the C6, and there's some C5, and he's talking about the foundation, and if it's a little bit off, what he's like a quarter inch higher or whatever, eventually it's going to crack, and then it's going to, building's going to fall down and collapse. And so like what the struggle, I think, it's still for me, watching it and like coming to my conclusion about Ivan, is that he is a good person. He has certainly has like a moral compass, has integrity, has ownership of his decisions, but his decision to sleep with Bethan was a decision. It would be the same as putting that C5 in with the C6, and it was just a decision that is causing everything to crumble and collapse. And so I feel like as a viewer and as somebody that's a part of all of this going on, because it really does kind of feel like you're just sitting awkwardly listening to this man try and take care of all this chaos. It's all falling apart, and it's really conflicting because I think I can understand Katrina's anger, and I can also understand Ivan's response to what he's done, and can see really good ownership and trying to want to figure out what it looks like for him to restore what he has broken and what has kind of fallen apart. And so I think it is really conflicting though because what he's done, and what makes it so hard too isn't just Katrina's reaction, but his reaction when he's talking to his kids, because like he's emotional. You can see that it breaks him. You know that Eddie's hurt, and Sean, both of them, but especially Eddie on that second call when he's under the duvet. It's just that also just adds so much weight to like what he has done to his family, and that's I think really conflicting as a viewer on trying to figure out how you feel about Ivan and what he's done.
Okay. So, all right. Yeah, because yeah, I fully agree. I was like, this isn't something I feel like we've seen in film, of someone owning up to a mistake, or at least someone who's so adamant about owning up to a mistake. Especially because we get I'm assuming sort of like a bait and switch at the beginning where I'm assuming was going to go home, but then that's when he decides to drive to London to be with Bethan. It's just I think I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around still that makes him a good person.
I mean, I think we also have to look at his reaction to Katrina's reaction.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he made a mistake. He's owning up to it. And he knows that telling her over the phone is not the best option, but that's the only one he's got at the moment. And he understands that, like, this is devastating news. And so he lets her have that emotion while, giving her some space and not, she hangs up on him multiple times, and yeah, he like shows his visible frustration, but he's not like constantly trying to call her and get back on the phone. He lets her have that space and backs off a little, and that is a narrative thing, so you can like we get more out of the story for like the
sure
the baby side and the construction plans, but that is something that also happens. I feel like that kind of points to, he knows he made a mistake. He made a fault, but he is doing, everything he can on all fronts to try and make the best of what he's done.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm going to trust you guys on this because y'all have probably seen it more than me. Because again, like I was saying, it is sort of refreshing to see this sort of story that we've seen in a lot of different films. I can't think of any right now, but the story of, someone having an affair and having to, again, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Otis has been, I don't know what's been wrong with him lately. But someone who's had an affair and, maybe they're keeping it a secret or maybe they're owning up to it, but not like this. And that is something refreshing that I really liked, is that he is owning up to it. And like Zach and Alex, what y'all are saying, about him, he's trying to help Katrina understand, but also he's not trying to essentially force her to just be okay with it. He when he explains to her, like, I know this is a mistake. It was the only mistake I've ever made in 15 years. I understand like how you feel. So maybe I need to give it another watch through and see if maybe I can come to the same conclusion that he is a good person.
I think so, because like I'm not even sure that the narrative is even trying to ask that question or waiting for an answer for that question. I think it's just, showing a man struggle with trying to keep his life together while sticking to specific principles and trying to stick to his honesty, right? In a moment where he was dishonest, he's trying to fix it. What I also like, what Zach brought up, is that what Stephen Knight has done here is everything is about the core, the core and the heart of the film, which is the soccer match, football match, or the construction. All of that isn't filler. Like, it all matters, right? I'm still like you, right? I am trying to make sense of, because the construction stuff is sort of like what Zach was saying. It's symbolic of him trying to hold things together without it collapsing all over him, right? The football match, I know, is important, and I know that the specific player they are talking about matters so much, and that is sort of a stand-in for Ivan and his character as well. Have I figured that out yet? Not really. If either of you guys have, that would be wonderful. Because I know it matters, and I know that him being labeled as a donkey and like a buffoon, but him stepping up and helping win the match matters. All of it does. And this is peak Stephen Knight right here. All right, this is when he is so good. So, who's up?
I would say the soccer or the football player. He's correlated with Ivan himself, because throughout the whole thing we get Ivan would never act like this. This photo thing wouldn't happen to him. He's gone 10, maybe 9 years at this company, and never has anything done anything wrong, except for this one time. So, and it's the same thing with that soccer player. They always say he's a donkey. He never does anything right any other time, except for this one time. So it's kind of like mirror images of each other, I guess. One is usually really good, and then they have a bad day. And one's usually really bad, and then they have a great day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, Jeremy, that everything is important. Like, I'm sitting here kind of focusing on the three storylines, essentially, the construction, the match, and the baby. And it all kind of, in a way, correlates, again, to like Zach's point about, even down to the type of concrete that the whole building could fall over. It is interesting how these three things seem separate, but also kind of are metaphors of almost each other in a way.
Well, And, you know, it's hard this first go around, right? Because I
Mhm.
remember my first time watching it, I was waiting for something to either happen, or really I was waiting for something not to happen, meaning I was wondering if, like, I don't know, I was waiting for some sort of weird twist in a way, like him not really going to see Bethan and him going somewhere else, really, or I was waiting for, you know, I don't know, something. Because I had been trained, or I guess, with the movies I like to watch, if it's a unique setup like this is, and it's shot in this very unconventional way, and we're focusing on just one live person, right? I'm thinking there's going to be just one more thing that's going to set it over the top, and it be this either fantastical thing, or it's going in a completely different direction. They're going to subvert my expectations, or something. So that first go around, I understand why you're sort of like, what do I need to be focusing on, right?
Mhm.
At least for me. And I think once you understand, okay, all of this is legitimate. This is not, this isn't, some sort of weird avant-garde or surrealist thing. It's just this story shot in an unconventional way. Then you can start dissecting okay, well, why tell the story in this way? Have why have Ivan called everybody, right? Um, while we were watching it, Haley was like, that's me when I drive home, because I'm just constantly calling people when I drive home from work. And that made me laugh. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to tell this story, as I guess, conventional as it ended up being from my expectations the first go around. It ends up being an unconventional story in just Ivan's character alone, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, I'm definitely going to have to give this another rewatch. But I mean, I really loved how, even though I'm struggling with the Ivan's actual character, I do love that everything is so almost pinpoint accurate, well, not accurate. It's laser focused on telling this story, especially when, he's told by Gareth that they're letting him go, and he's still like, nope, well, I'm going to make sure that building is ready to go. Like, I'm not trying to get my job back. I'm just going to make sure that it's ready to go. And then, trying to reassure Bethan that everything's going to be fine. And, then trying to, work things out with Katrina. And so I do like that everything is so laser focused on each part of the story.
I kind of
It's
want
just,
I want Zach and Alex to weigh in on this. That yes, Ivan is trying to right wrongs, right? But in the way he's doing this, there's a moment, and it's very early on, where Bethan asks Ivan if he loves her, and he just flat out says, "Well, no, of course not. Why?
Yeah.
Why would we? We don't know each other, right?" He's so earnest and so blunt, you know. And I mean, again, and that's who he is, right? But I wanted some thoughts on just the way he communicates with people, because he is very earnest and very blunt.
Oh yeah, he's on the spectrum for sure. But I don't know why you're laughing. It's an actual thing. But,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I feel like he kind of might have to be, that blunt, especially with her, because, But I mean, at this point, he says in the whole movie, everything is, nothing's a joke anymore. Everything is entirely real. But this man doesn't know this woman. they worked together, and then they, had a one night stand and made a mistake and didn't even see each other until, I guess now. But, I think he kind of needs to be, because, I feel like in that previous phone call of the first time she let him know, she was probably already, was talking like that to begin with. So I think this time he was like ready for it and be like shutting it down immediately.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's just part of who he is too. Like it's just kind of he's a real, like I imagine this. I mean, he knows everything that's going on with the poor. He knows like the exact weights. Like he knows every page that has the details. Like this is just a guy who is very systematic, and I think I know several people like that, very very type A, and for them, even just like his response to Katrina, he's like, I need the next practical step to take. Like we just need to find the next practical steps, and it's like, someone, it's like I don't know if that's the right thing to say, man. Like you don't,
Yeah.
and same with like Beth, and I mean, I absolutely understand what he means, like for sure. It's like, yeah, y'all had this one night, y'all were both probably drunk, a couple bottles of wine in you, and then you've just kind of, yeah, it seems like there's not really any interaction until that day when she must have been sending messages about, he got the messages and then he calls and says, I've seen it. And so I think a lot of it too is just, this is how he is as a person. Like he is very systematic about things. And so, those kind of people that kind of just have their system and they just go through it. And it does come off as a bit rough, I feel like, for sure. Which can be another conflicting thing as somebody listening in on all these conversations. Just on you think about it and it's like, I don't know if that's the most empathetic response. Like maybe some of that is
that you caused.
Yeah. It's like you are getting lost and trying to keep all of this up. And then also to bring up what Jeremy said earlier about his childhood trauma, I think that plays so much into it too, because he's just trying, his whole life, it seems like he took a lot of pride in not being like his dad. And now all of a sudden he's confronted with the exact same challenge. And, it's like he hasn't been probably dealing with that in the most proper way. And working through whatever it is that he feels like his dad, like, just whatever mental or emotional trauma was there, he probably hasn't dealt with, right? Because we also see that Ivan's pretty, he just keeps everything compartmentalized. He's pretty calm throughout all of this, like there's not ever really any, I guess with Donald a little bit, but you can understand every time he's talking to him, he's had another can of cider. And so, but he stays, pretty neutral throughout all of it. And, yeah, so for me, that's a part of who he is. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, but I just kind of took it as this is really kind of how he is. And once I realized that it was just started, that was just a part of it, of thinking, oh, okay, so this is another driving force and why he is the way that he is. And kind of, his foundation was kind of built on what on how his dad abandoned him and was, all these, he's apparently a terrible person, all the things that he says to him. And so I think that's another factor into creating this man now that is very successful at work, it seems like, right? Doing the biggest pour in Europe outside of military and whatever else. Yeah, has a nice car, family, kids. I mean, it just super successful guy. It seems like a really successful guy. Pays attention to detail. And yeah, I think his father abandoning him plays a lot into some of his coldness as well. As much as Ivan probably wouldn't want to admit it. But I think he's confronted with that now in this moment. And that's why there's some of that kind of coldness that it seems like he has.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that he talked to his dad before this incident? I think that was a regular thing of, something going wrong with his life. He, takes out his frustration on, basically to him, the cause to all of his problems in life, a father that wasn't even there.
It's a good question. Yeah, because it seems like, I don't know, during these moments that he is speaking to his dad, I don't know, it seems like I can go either way, that he has either done this before or he is so overwhelmed with all of these things that are going on in his life at that moment that he's sort of seeking an outlet, and he's looking for, someone to explain everything to, right? And he's choosing his father in that moment to almost tell himself that things are different, I'm different. This will not end up the same way as my father, right? I think that perhaps in that moment he's just looking for self-validation, I think. Whether or not he's done it before, I don't know. I think maybe it seems that that this is one of the only times, because I would assume that he wouldn't like to think about his father too much, but in this moment he's looking for this self-validation and seeing that, showing that he is different. And I did want to ask a question with you guys that I think it might seem like it doesn't matter, but I think it does matter a lot, at least in this performance. What did you guys think of Tom Hardy's voice in this performance? Because it's so unique, and it's not the way he talks normally, right? This isn't the way that Tom Hardy speaks in real life. So what do you think that choice meant? Go ahead.
I mean, it's like a Welsh accent that he does. So I feel like he is, I don't know, because, the voice he's doing, it's, it's a little posh. It's kind of like a refined, like, I feel like his pattern of speech is definitely, maybe he grew up a little poor because, he didn't have a dad. So he kind of projects that air, in the way he speaks to compensate for how he felt when he was younger. But, and the accent he chose, I feel like, really helps lend itself to that, because it's not some, I'm from Birmingham kind of accent.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, all that kept coming into my brain was the interview he did, the Wired autocomplete interview with Andy Serkis, and one of the questions was, how did he come up with the voice of Bane? And he's talking about this bare knuckle boxer, and like my brain kept going back to that, because the accent, because he gives kind of like an example in that interview, and the accents were eerily similar. I mean, in this film, it seems like it's a little just higher pitched. But for me, it was almost like he chose this accent to make Ivan seem a little bit more, maybe what we were talking about earlier, maybe to make him seem a little bit more calm, or maybe a little bit more distant, that his accent doesn't really match his body type, maybe. I did think it was an interesting choice. because yeah, Tom Hardy's actual speaking voice is a little lower and a little bit more gravelly, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, the reason I ask is that it is a choice, right? And so I don't think that, like, if he had done his normal speaking voice, I don't know how much it would have changed the performance, but I know it would have, right? It would have given us a different a different perspective of who Locke is, right? Because I think the voice is, you're right, it does give a sort of, with its higher pitch, I think it maybe makes him a little more mild-mannered, a little more reserved, maybe. And it also just might be my ignorance, and his character is from a certain place in the UK where that's their accent, right? I don't know, right? I know he's driving to London, but it takes him an hour and a half to get there. And I have recently found that people who live in the UK and in England, they're upset if something is 45 minutes away, right? They're like, oh my God, that's so far, right? Where us, it's like, it's a 6-hour drive. And they're like, what, did you like stop somewhere and stay overnight? It's like, no. So meaning that accents probably do vary a great deal, even though it's not that much of a distance, right? So it could be that also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it used to be more of a distance when you can only walk places and not drive.
Right. So, yeah. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. I don't know, but I do know that he made the choice for some reason, right?
And I agree. I think, especially if you look at someone like Tom now and his, just at everything, like his tone and from whether it's like Tinker Tailor or Lawless, you just work through like everything. Warrior, he is such a vocal actor. Obviously, Bane, such a vocal actor in a lot of his roles, and like that is very important to who he sets up to be. It's like with any of those things, it always is like very intentional. And yeah, for whatever reason, whether it's he's from a Welsh area or it was just to match the manner of who Ivan is as a character. Yeah, I think it definitely helps to portray him as somebody that's, kind of calm, or because, just imagine if he had like Tommy's voice, from the Warrior or something, or it's like, it just like would be this guy that's just got a lot of edginess and like just real pungent, like you just, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. And so I agree that it was an intentional choice, whether that's Tom and Steven working through that or leaving it up to Tom Hardy himself. Because I think it would change maybe how we would feel about Ivan, if he was a little bit more rough or whatever. It'd be probably easier to see him as this jerk that, doesn't understand what he's done or something. But I think it plays in well to his character. The decision to go with whatever accent. I guess Alex had a Welsh accent.
Also, I just looked it up because I was curious. Getting from Birmingham to London is actually 2.5 hours long. So that means he was flying.
He's going 80 miles an hour.
Yeah, he said 90.
The man follows traffic laws. All right. He said so.
Well, and I think in the UK they don't have a speed limit.
Oh,
I think. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Wouldn't they have to?
But yeah, I looked it up.
My coworker is English. I'll ask him tomorrow.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Delve indeed.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry. I just wanted to say, have you guys ever seen the behind the scenes of the rig they had for the car?
No,
You should look it up because it's really cool. Because you can't drive a vehicle,
right,
and focus on your performance. So the car is just on a trailer,
mm-hmm.
and they have it 3 cameras rigged up at a time, and they control and remote controlling, like in a truck that's pulling the trailer down the highway. So all the cars driving by him, that's in real time. He's not really driving, but
right.
He's not?
No, it's this thing called acting. I can teach you how to do it one day.
Which brings up a good a good point about just the subtlety of acting, because you're right, he is being pulled on a trailer. That much I knew. But it's some of the best driving acting. He's not jerking the wheel around, like some sort of maniac.
Yeah.
But I was wondering about the camera rigs, if we want to get to the technical aspect of the film, because there are those moments where it almost seems to be handheld, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the camera's moving in the car, and I assumed in those shots someone was sitting in the passenger seat with him, but the fact that they're moving them remotely from a trailer, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they couldn't. Because I thought about that too. I was like, how are they doing this? Because then I remembered our Children of Men episode. I was like, no, they didn't cut a hole in the roof and put the camera in there. So how are they doing this?
Very similar approach to it. In that same movie, they have the, that's typically how they do it. Unless you're pretty low budget, then you just have the actors risk their lives for a picture.
Right, Tom. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Get on the highway. We'll film it.
I mean, he should have a lot of practice now with this movie, and then Mad Max. He drives a lot.
You're right.
That's true. Y'all didn't know this, but Mad Max was actually on my list for this season. I changed it for a very special movie, but it would have been funny had I kept Mad Max, and that would have been 2 Tom Hardy movies in one season
driving.
Of him driving. Okay. Speaking of the technical aspect of this, kind of to go back to this, not necessarily the story, but I feel like the other kind of character in the film is his car. I feel like maybe that was just me, but I feel like the car obviously plays an important role because it's going to get him from Birmingham to London, but it's almost like it's a living, breathing thing that Stephen Knight is trying to show us.
You're right, because not once did I really think about the car in a commercially way. Listen, I loved the movie, but there's that scene in Barbie that I cannot stand, that is a commercial for the car, and I cannot stand it, right? It completely takes you out of the movie, and because it's a commercial, it's a car commercial, right?
Literally shot the same way too.
I don't remember what car it was, so it's a bad commercial.
It's some kind of Ford,
don't say it.
I think. I don't know.
Either Ford or Chevrolet.
But this is shot. It's almost like this is his tool. This is what he's using for communication and obviously transportation. But I never thought of it as a commercial for BMW, right? And it takes a really special talent to not make it super flashy, and it's just utilizing the space that he's in. It's not really the space specifically, but just the way he's using the space, and he's in the space.
Now, why do you think, though, Stephen Knight established that he was driving in a BMW then?
That's a great question. I think
he likes BMW.
I guess he likes BMWs, yeah. Well, it also may establish that where you may think to look at him in the beginning, you might think he's some sort of low-level blue-collar worker. He isn't, right? Because he drives this really fancy car.
He's the foreman.
Right.
You know, he has like the most important job at a construction site. So it would make sense that he's driving the most, expensive car that probably work paid for it, honestly.
And honestly, I think I just answered my own question. I think to also establish that he's well off, he's got a nice car, a good job, and a good family.
Or just that he's successful and that he's proud of his success, right? If he wasn't proud of his success, he wouldn't spend his money on such a luxurious item like a BMW hatchback.
A 99 Civic.
Right.
I was going to say something, and then that killed me. No, I don't remember what it was now.
Oh,
that was really funny.
The whole vibe of the movie is the most awkward Uber ride you could ever be in. I mean, essentially what it feels. You're sitting in the back seat at the time.
Can't imagine.
Oh man.
Now, since we're on sort of like the film as a film itself, Tom Hardy agreed to do this so Stephen Knight would work on Taboo with him and his dad. Chips. Yeah.
Chips Hardy.
By the way, coolest name ever. So without this, we wouldn't have Taboo, which is probably one of my favorite Tom Hardy projects that he's done.
Fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. Rain, if you have not, you need to immediately.
I started it because I want to say you told me about it, and I started it, and then I just never got around to finishing it. I mean, now that I've finally finished The Bear, I have been sort of on an FX kick. I finished Dave, and then I finished The Bear. So, I mean, Taboo's still on the list.
There you go. Perfect.
I'll just have to find time to watch it in between rewatching Daredevil, because now that Daredevil is MCU continuity, I've been rewatching that. Okay. Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about that that someone else hasn't brought up?
Looking over my notes. No, I think I teased last week just talking about Stephen Knight's filmography and the ebbs and flows, because I thought it was interesting, because this is obviously so good, right? Eastern Promises is so good. Peaky Blinders is so good, right? But then he'll do something like Serenity, which I think is really interesting. I will say it's ambitious, right? He really swings, right? He also created the Jason Momoa show C, which I haven't seen.
Really?
On Apple TV, yeah. He wrote Spencer, the Princess Diana film with Kristen Stewart. He did Girl in the Spider's Web with, oh man, what is her name? Sorry,
Claire Foy.
Yes, he did that, which wasn't received very well. I'm sorry, I'm also looking. The Seventh Son.
I told you about that last week. That
did you? Okay.
Yeah,
it's just
from
odd.
The trailer alone,
he's just he's either on his game, right, or just misses the mark, which I guess is average, I suppose. I probably didn't even need to bring it up, but I thought it was interesting. I I recommend going through his writer filmography, just so you can see all the stuff, because he's very prevalent in filmmaking and in film writing in general. You'll see some of the stuff and you'll go, really? The FX remake of A Christmas Carol? Yeah, you know.
In the industry, we call that Shyamalaning. You know, you start really good and then you just go back, and then you get kind of good and then you just go back, and then you get really good and then you just absolute shit. So.
Yeah. So we'll see what's to come of him coming up. I know he's working on the Peaky Blinders movie, which is set to shoot this year. So I really got to get on finishing that. I know Zack and his wife Kensley have really been hounding me about it, so I need to get on it. So, yeah.
Well, I need to watch it. Period. I need to add that to the list as well. Just more things to watch.
Your job.
Yeah, but then how will I pay for all these shows to watch?
I don't know.
Sell your body.
You know, it's funny. Right before you said it, I was like, I mean, I guess I could sell my body.
There you go. Same wavelength, you two.
That means it's a good idea.
Everyone should take a lesson from that. If you and one of your best friends have the same idea, then it's obviously a good idea.
It's fate at that point.
Yeah.
Guys.
Oh, man.
You guys did awesome. We can't thank you enough for being on. And talking about Locke, which is an amazing film, and I'm so happy that you guys shared in that sentiment and were able to, break it down with us. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. This was interesting having two separate guests this time instead of just one.
Breaking news.
Yeah. Well, and Jeremy, they get to be on when I announce what we're doing next week,
which is exciting. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I thought really long and hard about this because we're getting close to the end of the season, and I was like, man, what do I want to do? Because I only have 3 choices left, and the answer was given for me to celebrate. I mean, even though it's going to be way past due, but it's on the forefront of my brain right now to celebrate his birthday. Next week, we will be doing David Lynch's Lost Highway.
Cool. A very daunting task. Thanks.
Well,
yeah.
I didn't want to do it too close to Fire Walk with Me, and it's one of 2 movies I still haven't seen on my list. So,
okay.
And again, he just had a birthday, so why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Fire Walk with Me. What was it? Lost Highway.
Yeah.
Lost Highway. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Well, everyone, even though we have our 2 listeners on the show, we hope everyone enjoyed Locke, and we will see everyone next week for Lost Highway.